In this class, we're going to focus in on the marketing concept. The development of marketing can be reviewed and understood as the outcome of the following concepts: the production concept, the sales concept, the marketing concept. And in this context, a concept can be viewed as a philosophy which organizations adopt individually or pass through as a sequence. So a concept is a philosophy, or it's a way of working or a way of doing things that the organization can do through a sequence. It's a concept. There are various parts to it, and each one is performed in sequence. And the totality of that we would classify as a concept. That's what gives us the idea of the concept. Now, start with production. Well, the production concept dominated during the 1890s to, difficult to say, but 1920s. This is really the post-industrial revolution period. The full-blown industrial revolution started back in the late 1700s, ran throughout the 1800s, and really the tail end of it would be around the 1920s, 1930s, that late. But by then, new concepts were coming in. The importance of marketing and the importance of selling was starting to encroach on the exclusivity of production. So during the period, the focus of business was very much on production and production efficiency. In fact, it goes right back. It goes right back to the early days of the Industrial Revolution, back to the early 1800s or back into the 1700s. Industrialists were convinced that getting production right was all that was needed. And to some extent, it was probably right, because consumers didn't have access to products or the outcome of industrialization prior to that. There was no rapid industrialization, and there wasn't a proliferation of goods coming out of industry at the time for the consumers. So the consumers had to buy what they could get. So in that sense, industry did not have to focus on marketing. They just concentrated on production, and whatever was produced, the customers had no choice, but they bought it. So the emphasis back then was on production, and of course competition and an understanding of competition and the importance of competition drove efficiency. That's what the industrialists were looking for, both to save on costs through efficiency, but also to increase the size of their organization and the importance of the organization. And there were sociological benefits as well, because the industrialists were seen now as the important people in society. To some extent, it had shifted from farmers to industrialists. Products that yield high profits were only mass-produced. It was a concentrated market where demand exceeded supply. Customers wanted the goods. So there was no need for marketing. Customers wanted the goods. These goods were new. It was a new era, new industry, new products. So there was no need for real marketing at the time. Just produce it most efficiently. During this phase, competition was minimal, and the organization was production oriented. The production department was the key to success. There was no need to worry about marketing or selling. Customers wanted it. It was new. The world had never seen anything like this before. This was the Industrial Revolution. And there were new ways of doing things, new products, new modes of transport. The railways had come in and canals had just been replaced as a major form of transport. So it was an exciting time, and the industrialists didn't feel the need to market their goods. During the Industrial Revolution, the concept was effective as product range was limited, mainly consisted of necessities. There were very few luxury items produced. But the industrialists didn't have to worry too much about, as I said, about marketing. Customers wanted it, so they were just satisfying the demand. The focus of this type of organisation is to achieve high production efficiency, reduce cost and mass distribution. So emphasis was on efficiency, reducing costs, and getting the product out to as many as possible. The production concept, well, these type of organisations assume that the production of a good quality goods is sufficient in driving sales rather than customer needs and wants. They didn't look at the customer's needs and wants. They just made good quality goods, as they saw them, good quality output. And if they made good quality output, they believed the customers would come and purchase. They didn't have to look at customer needs or do any analysis of customer wants, or just produced and customers would buy. Because there was no alternative. This is the start of the Industrial Revolution. There's very little focus on marketing. The main focus of the sales team is to make sales transactions. So there was nothing in the marketing sphere that was seen as important. It wasn't properly even understood. The sales team would make a sales transaction. The customer would go to the member of the sales team to purchase the good, and the good was transacted, and that was it. This type of organisation still exists mainly in developing countries, which focus on mass production. I can't think of examples, but I read that in a book. And I must check for real examples and perhaps mention them in seminars. Or perhaps you could find out some yourself and educate me and tell me what you found. But I believe it's the case that in many countries the focus is still on mass production, and marketing is an unnecessary good. The people don't have access to goods, so when they see the goods, they buy them. They don't have to be marketed. The sales concept took place after the First World War, from say the 1920s to the 1950s. During this phase, there was an increased accessibility of new products, leading to more competition. So in the interwar phase, more new products came on the market. Now there was competition. At last, competition started. So now the producers had something else to think about. It placed more emphasis on personal selling and advertising to drive sales. So they had to look at marketing. They had to look at selling. They had to look at all the facets of marketing as well, advertising and the quality of the good and perhaps even after-sales service. And it became more sophisticated progressively over time. The sales concept, it's based on aggressive selling. The focus is to sell what is produced rather than what the customer wants. So it's aggressive in the sense that you have to persuade the customer that that is what they want. Don't ask them what they want, just tell them that's what they want. Tell them that's what they want and they must get it. So it's quite aggressive. The sales concept introduced a range of promotion and marketing techniques which are widely used today. We still see or hear of these being used up to now. We hear of selling tactics which are quite forceful. Sometimes they hit the news. They're often reported in news magazine programs on television and in the press. The goal of a sales concept is to beat the competition. There's no emphasis on customer satisfaction. Just beat the competition. Just beat the other companies and get the product out there, get it to the customer. If the customer doesn't want it, just sell it to them. It's quite aggressive. Make sure the customer wants it and beat the competition. The marketing concept is most widely adopted marketing approach. It's the most widely adopted one. This is the one that we're more accustomed to nowadays. It's a lot more subtle. The approach focused on customers' needs and wants rather than hard selling. It's looking at the customer, looking at what they need and trying to address what they need rather than hard selling, telling the customer what they want. And they need the product. Rather than doing that, it's looking at what the customer actually needs. This phase came into existence somewhere around the 1950s, thereabouts, or so the books suggest, something around that period. And that seems reasonable. So now there's more emphasis on the customer and the customer requirements. It's less aggressive. After the Second World War, there was increased competition with a wide range of products available. And as time moved on from the Second World War into the 1950s, 60s, 70s, more and more goods became available and there was less austerity, and the marketing personnel were starting to factor in customer requirements more fully and try to address the customer requirements, as I said earlier, rather than that forceful, aggressive selling that happened in the earlier phases. Customers had more options and increased disposable income. After the Second World War, going into the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, customers had more disposable income and customers had to be pleased. So it was important that the marketing concept factored this in. The marketing concept now put customer front and center. The customer was very important, was really all important in this situation. Aggressive selling and production concepts had become ineffective. Not just ineffective, but they were looked down upon. They were frowned upon by customers. And companies that tried that tactic didn't get anywhere. The focus of the marketing concept is on customer needs and satisfaction. It's trying to determine what the customer wants and what will give the customer satisfaction. If an organization wants to sustain long-term growth and profit, they must focus all their efforts on the customer and produce products and services that the target market requires, that are the requirement of the market, that it's what the customers want. If they're going to succeed, if they're going to last, they must address customer wants. They can't bully the customer into buying the product. They must find out what the customer wants, through market research perhaps, find out what the customer wants and make the product that the customer wants. And in that way, get sales. The market-orientated organisation adopts a range of marketing techniques focused on achieving customer satisfaction and demand. There are all sorts. It could be advertising as part of the marketing, creating a demand, a desirability in the mind of the customer for the product. It could be a fashion thing. It could be repetitive advertising. It could be marketing door to door. It could be sales events. There are lots of ways of doing it. repetitive advertising on television. There's many ways of doing it. But it does not involve the hard sell that we saw in the earlier period, that more aggressive hard sell. This one is appealing to customers' requirements. And that takes us across this introduction to marketing and places the marketing activity within a sort of a spectrum, where it starts, the middle period, which is more aggressive, and the final period where we're now seeing the integration of customer wants and needs and feelings into the selling scenario, where the marketing agents must address the requirements of the customer. That's all we're going to deal with here. From now on, we will get into marketing much more fully. This is just a general introduction to show the progression from the early days from almost the Industrial Revolution back in the 1700s, late 1700s, right up to the present. And we see how it has emerged and evolved. Now we can go into marketing as we know it more fully today. That's all we're going to do, so let's leave it there. Say thank you for watching.